In case you hadn't heard, Emily is in Paris. At least she was. Netflix's shock announcement that Emily would be moving to Rome for the latest season prompted President Emmanuel Macron to declare that we will fight hard to keep Emily in Paris in France, which came after his wife Brigitte already appeared on the show.
We will fight hard and we will ask them to remain. Emily in Paris in Roma doesn't make sense.
Such interventions are all good fun for the modern politician, but Emily is no laughing matter. Since the young Chicago marketing exec arrived in Paris in 2020, she has given a measurable boost to the city's tourism industry, despite committing every faux pas in the book, while her grasp of French has left a lot to be desired.
Merci. Have a bonne journée.
But Emily has a darker side, namely the impact that an influx of her followers can have on long-term renters. So if Emily were to fall for a tortured Irish soul and move to Dublin, should renters be worried? Tourists and digital nomads undoubtedly bring money and jobs, but with nightly rates soaring on platforms like Airbnb, Vrbo and Booking.com, landlords are incentivized to end leases with long-term tenants and cash in with visitors, which can result in lower and middle-income workers getting priced out and pushed out. In recent years, Europe has seen a number of protests in its most sought-after locations, and various works of graffiti ranging from unwelcoming to most unwelcoming. In Barcelona, locals even took to spraying tourists with water.
A water fight on the streets of Barcelona.
While in Athens, residents went as far as to hold a mock funeral for their neighborhood.
These Athens residents are mourning the death of their neighborhood.
Airbnb provides more than just accommodation. It's now all about experiences. Pain au chocolat in Paris, gelato in Rome, Guinness in Dublin, and pastel de nata in Lisbon, those creamy and delicious custard tarts. Lisbon has experienced some of the highest rent increases in Europe, and the city is seeking a referendum on an outright ban on short-term rentals. The mayor of Paris is promising a similar referendum, and interestingly, she hasn't joined the Macrons in extending a warm welcome to Emily. Maybe she doesn't watch Netflix. Or maybe as a savvy politician, she knows who butters her baguette, and it's not digital nomads. Put simply, is Emily just bad news? To answer this, let's imagine the following scenario. After her spell in Rome, Netflix takes Emily to Lisbon for the following season, where she has an iconic romantic moment over a custard tart in what comes to be remembered as the greatest episode ever. The effect is immediate. Lisbon's population swells by almost 15% within 4 weeks, helped by social media references from celebrities and presidents the world over. Flights go through the roof, hotels, Airbnbs, and even camping sites are renting at insane levels, and queues around Lisbon's bakeries are forming as early as 6 a.m, with custard tarts sold out by 11. How the supply of tarts responds to a surge in demand is known as its elasticity, which is not a custard reference, but a fancy word that economists use for responsiveness. The supply of tarts is highly elastic, or responsive, because the ingredients are readily available, the recipe is well known, and it's easy for new producers to enter the market. As a result, the custard tart crisis quickly passes through 4 stages. Demand goes up, prices go up, supply goes up, and prices come back down. But in housing, it's a different story, and not just because each stage takes longer. The most desirable cities in the world make it extremely hard to construct new housing, for a variety of reasons, which leaves housing stuck in the second phase, high prices. A show called Emily in Texas might not sound as enchanting, nor does a romantic moment over spare ribs, but there would be little risk of Emily's arrival driving up housing costs, because Texas and the American South have extremely elastic housing supplies. When demand goes up, they simply start building, whether that's densely in the core or sprawling out into the suburbs, the result of which is to dampen house prices. But in coastal cities, like New York, LA, and San Francisco, housing elasticity is about as low as it gets anywhere in the world, as it is in Vancouver north of the border. New construction is difficult in these cities, not just due to physical barriers like the coastline, but well-heeled residents also erect legal and political barriers to new construction. In Europe, not only is there political resistance to urban sprawl for environmental and aesthetic reasons, there is a good degree of European snobbery against building up, especially in Europe's historic urban cores. The centre of Paris is marked by distinctive houseman architecture of 6 to 8 stories, and there's no discernible appetite among Parisians to start knocking these down to make room for holiday inns or tall apartment buildings. So the obvious question is, where are all these newcomers to go? Despite the difficulty in adding new supply, it's not uncommon for high-demand cities to have designated tourism marketing agencies and major events to drive up demand. Paris has just hosted the Olympics and the Rugby World Cup. Barcelona has just hosted the America's Cup. LA is set to host the next Olympics, while Spain and Portugal will host the next Soccer World Cup. Of course, these tournaments only last for a month or so, but they are part of a broader pattern: demand-obsessed governments. In Barcelona, Turisme CEO Matthew Hernandez says the city's second tourist tax will allow Barcelona to pay for better exhibitions, festivals and sports events, benefiting both residents and tourists alike, which amounts to taxing demand to stimulate more demand. Why do governments do this? Politicians are generally motivated by a mixture of wanting to attach themselves to popular trends for political gain and the desire to do right by their city and their country.
I think it's good for the image of France. I mean, in Paris is super positive in terms of attractiveness for the country. So for my own business, it's a very good initiative.
Part of it is also a breakdown in communications between government departments. Ireland's tourism marketing agencies, Fáilte Ireland and Tourism Ireland, which are under the Department of Tourism, spent €224 million in the most recent financial year, while the Department of Children is housing tens of thousands of refugees in hotels, which has reduced tourism capacity. Meanwhile, the Department of Housing is battling with the European Commission to clamp down on short-term lets, which would reduce capacity even further. Getting tough on short-term lets is at least understandable in Dublin, but hard to justify in counties like Kerry and Galway, which are heavily dependent on tourism and have plenty of space for housing. By the way, this channel always welcomes sponsorship interest, so if you run a business, no matter how big or small, and would like to support the channel, please reach out. And if you'd like to chat with us on Discord, please join our membership program using the Patreon link. As for Emily, some might say it's unfair to blame housing problems on our Netflix star, but as adorable as she is there not good reason to be worried if Netflix goes all PS I love you and sends her to Ireland? Well, the answer is that depends on Ireland's housing supply elasticity, which varies by county. According to one paper, counties in light colours have a low elasticity of supply, and Dublin has the lowest of all, while elasticity is also low in Kildare and most of Munster. These counties are not good at increasing housing supply as prices rise, while counties in darker shades do a better job, with Leitrim best of all. So Emily's choice of county is vital. According to Ronan Lyons of Trinity College, maximising the elasticity of supply ought to be front and centre in the country's housing goals. The fact that it's not has meant that all sorts of well-meaning interventions that have been introduced may have been making things worse rather than better. One such well-meaning intervention is the policy of rent pressure zones, which have spread across the country since they were introduced in 2016. These zones allow the government to control rents, but as we covered in a previous episode, controlling rents has been shown around the world to drive down supply. Rent pressure zones also involve much stricter controls of Airbnbs. As of September, the government has made all of Galway County Council's area a rent pressure zone, which is a strange response. For a part of the country that's mostly empty, Connemara's scenery should of course be protected, but some of the world's most cherished coastlines involve humans building in harmony with nature, and an effective ban on new housing should at least be questioned. If the government can't resist its authoritarian urge to control and ban things, then it could at least stop pumping up demand, namely by defunding its tourism marketing agencies and transferring this budget from demand to supply. This could mean some retraining for Fáilte Ireland's executives, but affordable accommodation is the best form of marketing. Many commenters on this channel have expressed concerns about immigration, and there's no getting around the fact that an increasing population and a rigid planning system will increase housing pressures. But internal factors, such as reducing average household sizes and people moving to urban areas, also drive housing demand. Regardless of one's view on the subject, there can be little doubt that low elasticity of housing supply and high rates of immigration are a bad combination for renters and tourists alike. At the heart of all this is the lack of local democracy in Ireland. Apart from Limerick, every council is run by a chief executive appointed by the Department of Housing in the Custom House, and councillors have very little power to stand up for their counties. A 2023 European report stated that Ireland remains one of the most centralised countries in Europe, and there is still a lot to be done before local self-government in Ireland is on par with other European countries. Perhaps the current negotiations over a programme for government will yield a restoration of local democracy, to allow counties to get out from under the Custom House and focus on elasticity of supply in their own areas, while safeguarding their tourism industries. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. As for Emily, with elasticity so low in tourism hubs like Dublin, Cork and Kerry, it might be best if she stayed away for now, although Emily and Leitrim could work well. In the meantime, here's to wishing her well in Rome, where there should be no problems with new construction.